Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Dr. Kristen Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton, PhD candidate and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Empowered by Iron is proud to partner with Women's Strength Coalition. Women's Strength Coalition is on a mission to build communities through increased access to strength training. To support Women's Strength Coalition, please use the link in the description below to make a tax-deductible donation, or check out their website and look for their upcoming events. For Pull for Pride, they have them throughout the country in the next couple of months, so go check that out, and if you're feeling up to it, sign up for one of those. Our guest today is the founder of Iron Sisters, composed of Frances Manias, Jen Thompson, Bonica Brown, and Kimberly Walford. Iron Sisters is a camp that travels across the United States and Canada to teach powerlifting and sisterhood to those wanting to learn. Iron Sisters is coming to Madison, Wisconsin, April 13th through the 15th, and to Rock Hill, South Carolina, May 5th through 6th. If this sounds interesting to you and you want to go learn from the best, go to ironsistersusa.com to sign up. In the first part of today's episode, we had a little bit of a technical malfunction, so I'm going to give a brief summary of what Frances covered in the first 10 minutes of the interview before we got the technical difficulties worked out. Becoming empowered by Iron has been a natural progression for Frances. From a young age, she was always active. She competed in sports, which allowed her to become empowered by simply doing. As she moved into the iron, she used the iron to define herself. She was empowered through the iron and found value in helping others empower themselves through iron. Training with a barbell is a privilege, and Frances intentionally focuses on the positivity that comes from every training session, and that positivity carries over into her day-to-day life. The rest of this interview is freaking awesome, so stay tuned, and we hope you enjoy. Okay, so yeah, ignoring the noise. So that's something that, just like you said with the podcast, we've noticed a lot, especially as women. We are told like many things that we need to do, and what's the best, and what's the top 5, and you should look this way and this way and this way, and we forget to look within ourselves and really know what it is that we want to do. And I know that last interview we did with you, we talked about your transition from bodybuilding into powerlifting and how you really had to kind of look within inside you and say, well, I like this lifting thing. Like, I really like this powerlifting thing. It's great. And from that, you were able to build, the Iron Sisters camp and your training camp and like your own personal brand and all that good stuff. But was there a point in your life that you felt the noise consumed you?
I've done two things, I think, of being conscious of the noise, and because of that, I think, and the fact that I think even the last time we touched a little bit that I feel like I'm very much an extrovert, but we talked briefly about that as well, and so because of that introspectiveness, I like to think about things a lot. And so I'm cautious about allowing too much to come in without giving them too much weight, without thinking about them. So I think I've got that as a bit of a framework for which to have that noise. And then the other thing is, that community, which I talk about in terms of creating, if you have the opportunity, and the community can just be you and one more person. Our powerlifting team has grown. In fact, I was just doing the counts today, and we've got upwards of 11 or 12 gals. Now we can never all come together to train. We might have 2 of us, and there might be 8 of us, and I think rarely have we had all 12 come together. But the cool part is the community can start with 2. That's the neat part. And that privilege of having those people around you, like friends, of course, and they are, but then you can use those people to help you filter as well. I think, and that's a privilege. I realize that so many people that I talk to they don't have anyone else that they might be able to train with, or to spot them in a gym, or to have a conversation with, like when you guys come together, you have an opportunity to do that. And so doing the community that you've created. So it's a difficult time to navigate, and I think key or just a key thing that has come to mind from various sources this week has just been, Francis, pay attention. And that means not just paying attention to everything, right? But through that filter, continue to pay attention to, and you'll know. I think we also have to just also trust our gut, on the old, is it too good to be true, right? That kind of thing. And if I can keep going on this, and you can cut me off, because if this is rambling too much for you guys, it's so let's just backtrack here a little bit. So I've got a bit of introspectiveness. I've got these people in my community. It's pay attention, and it's seek out, in as best you can, just a handful of trusted sources. And you guys are a good example of that. You've talked about that, how you want to be more of that trusted source, but we don't need more than just a few places that we can go to that we trust, for information, because too much is just too much. And I think we can get so easily bogged down. So do an inventory, take stock of, what's coming into your email inbox, or, through your feeds, and get rid of stuff that just seems to, just to not jive, or just seem to be just taking up space. Because it is too much. So we've got to be actively looking at how can I be more actively eliminating that noise, and there's things and steps that we can take. So that's been really, really useful for me, and just a kind of top of mind at the start of this particular week.
Well, and I think also, what you're describing sounds to me a lot like just being a lot more present in your everyday life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's easy to get distracted, right? Even get distracted in life, and we can talk about it, via the social media stuff, and even sometimes our goals, right? Like our goals can easily distract us as well from just the day-to-day, and being as good a human being as we can. It's easy for me sometimes to just say, well, it's a training day, so all I'm going to focus on is training. But meanwhile I've got, because the goal is coming up, or whatever the case is, but I've got clients that I work with, and I've got a family, and I've got a dog, and I've got other things that are super, super important to me, that this is part of the balancing for me of how I want to live my life. And of course, we understand that when we accomplish something, that we skew the balance a bit. The closer we get to competition, or the more important we make that goal for ourselves, we're gonna bring it up the priority list, and say this is more, this is going to take a little bit more precedence. So, but in order for that to happen, then once again, we have to eliminate. We've got to eliminate the noise, and pare down, and really try to simplify things.
Oh, I agree completely. When I was in high school, that was like my word, to simplify. Whenever I felt like my whole world was crashing in, or I had just so many things, it was me taking a step back and thinking, well, how can I make this more simple? Like, what am I doing right now that I don't need to be doing, but I'm doing anyway? And I think you're right. And it has a lot, like with social media, a lot to do with people wondering if they're in the right spot in life by comparing themselves to people that they follow on the internet. So and so is my age, and they're like 20 steps ahead of me. And what am I doing wrong? Did you ever have moments like that as you started this career in powerlifting coaching and bodybuilding, and do you ever feel behind?
You know, I was a bit of a weirdo, and I still am. Yeah, because I just think I can't relate so much to that concept of feeling behind. You know, I am a bit of a high achiever, so to speak. So I sometimes I look at myself and my achievements, and I think, well, Frances, like, you know, like you're being lazy, or, you know, you're not working hard enough at this, or, you know, like, or simplify, right? And ourselves so often as well. And that can be unfortunate. And you know, some people might say, well, you know, I'm a procrastinator, or, you know, or I'm this zodiac sign or whatever. So, you know, I'm a perfectionist, and I try not to get too hung up on those things. Although, man, oh man, I can be a procrastinist, and those two things that come together, this is not a good scenario. And so when I live kind of with those types of labels, that can mess things up, right? And it can really mess things up in my head. And so I work better without labels, and I think we probably all would work better without labels, and as such, then we would all work better without comparing ourselves to others. So you know, putting our heads down and just going out and doing our thing, and, as you said, simplifying, and, you know, picking that one thing and choosing to make that my focus, and choosing to get better at the one thing that I'm really passionate about, versus saying, oh my goodness, I have all these inadequacies, and I've got to improve my weaknesses. Well, not necessarily. You know, some of the best people in the world have, you know, they've got one thing that they're extremely good at, and, you know, 1,000 things that are their weaknesses. To get better at that one thing, you know, they don't turn around and work on their weaknesses. They just work on that one thing and get it as good as possible. So I think in that regard, I was wired like that, and realized that about myself early on. And yet, like everybody, you know, my downfall is, once again, to get lost a little bit in the shuffle of procrastination or perfectionism, or, you know, even something as simple as, you know, losing confidence, which I think also is a very, very easy thing to do in today's day and age, with doing, and in particular with that very calculated and cultivated social media presence that is often what we see from other people. And if we don't seem to have that same polished look all the time that we're projecting for various reasons, then that can weigh heavy on us, right? It can weigh heavy on me. And my goal is always to bring myself back to my focus, bring myself back to me, right? Bringing it into what really matters. What's my purpose? What's my goal? What's my motivation? And that usually can set me back on track. And it's the only real kick in the pants that I think that I need.
Well, what really does matter to Frances? What would you say is the 3 most important things that you found in your life? What matters to you? Yeah,
these are deep, like, meaning of life kind of questions, right? And when confronted by these, you know, I get that little flutter in the stomach, and I get bits of waves of emotions, I guess, and whether they're unresolved emotions or just being at one with, you know, or being very present with that emotional state, which I think is super, super important for us as human beings as well. You know, I think the most important thing, and it might sound cheesy. You know, John Lennon wrote a song about it. You know, all you need is love. Was that John Lennon? Or was that the Beatles?
I think that's the Beatles.
It's the Beatles. Yeah. John was probably singing. So it's the most important thing I think for me, and this is for me, for who I am, for how I approach anything that I'm doing is, am I coming from a place of love for myself and a place of love for what it is that I'm doing, obviously, and ultimately, love for the people that I know it will potentially empower or impact. And so I came to that place at a very difficult time in my life, and I know you gals want to talk a little bit more about this, because it really was, I think, the thing that was the most important defining piece that came out of that critical time in my life. And it was this understanding that, is this truly about love? And what, my understanding of what love is was certainly being challenged at that time in my life. So if you want to talk about that, or you have a specific question about that point in my life, because I know you gals know a little bit about that point in my life, feel free to. I didn't give you the top 3 things, but I kind of segued into, I know, a place that maybe you guys want to talk about.
Well, one thing that you posted on your Iron Sisterhood Instagram, I think back before the holidays, sometime in November, there was a post. There was a picture of you in your bodybuilding days, which is just this fabulous picture of these ripped abs and this huge smile on your face, and is really just impressive. Obviously, you look like you're having fun and you're enjoying it and enjoying being on stage. And then shortly thereafter, you posted a picture about how sometimes a picture is not worth 1,000 words that you might think. Is what I think you said.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how, it looks like you're like in the time of your life and in the prime of your life in that picture of you on stage. But behind the scenes, you said that was kind of, the bodybuilding was kind of the only thing that was holding you together at that point. And so what was going on in your life at that point?
Yeah, I had just turned 30 in the previous fall of the photo that I had posted there, and so it was so from an age perspective, you think, man, yeah, she's 30, right? Like, she's been in the game for a while, she's figuring it out, and so on. And I was blindsided, literally and figuratively. With these overwhelming thoughts that, something very constant in my life, and something that I thought was very very, very supposed to be, right? This is the way that your life is supposed to be, was suddenly not. And so at the time, I had been married for almost 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And so I got married just before, I think just before my 23rd birthday. So I was in the 7th year of marriage to a fellow that was very much, I don't think soulmate is the right word, but certainly I called him my best friend at the time. And fantastic guy who supported me through all of the bodybuilding stuff, and even career stuff, and all kinds of things, and we had a great life. And I literally woke up one morning, and it was as simple as I had fallen in love with a woman. And when I say that, the woman at the time had no idea about this. So this was a very, one person kind of love affair that was going on. And that freaked the crap right out of me, because to put it into more perspective, I worked in a Christian liberal arts university, and a place where I had actually gone to school as a student, graduated from there, and my athletic director, biomechanics, physiology prof said, Francis, when you're done school, I'd really like you to come back here and work for us. And, I tried to ignore him. And then, he just kept calling, and I said, fine, I'll take the job. And so I had been in that position as well, for 6 years, really, really loving it, being groomed to take on the athletic directorship position and so on and so forth. So, was well established in my career in this Christian university. And so as a practicing Baptist, fundamentalist Baptist kind of gal, if I can use that defining term, this was a pretty shocking thing.
Yeah.
And right away, it was something that became this real struggle. From a spiritual perspective, how do I reconcile this with what I believe or call my faith and so on? And not being one to really hide, I guess I could have maybe, stayed in the quote unquote closet, but that wasn't really who anyways. And definitively, at the age of 30, Mary, you're not there yet, right?
No, not yet.
No, not yet. You're getting there. You're getting there. I mean, you might already be there, though. You might already be there already. I think we all as human beings, we all as women get to a point where we're just like we do have that confidence in ourselves. We've overcome a bunch of stuff, and we're at this level of maturity. I think that is like, hey, I'm doing stuff for me now. And I think that was where I was. And I realized, or I just jumped into this, hey, I gotta tell people about this. So the closet was not an option. It literally became something that I had to share. Who better to share it with, but, my best friend, husband at the time, who unfortunately did not take it well. Although, in fairness, there was a short period of, I'm going to just try to work through this stuff a little bit. Doing so, and in telling friends, in telling family, which was that was a bit of a disaster, and things really just escalated to the point that I guess you could imagine. I mean, there was most people didn't take it well. If you think of the circle of people that I was surrounding myself in terms of a church family, a Christian university family, a family that is not necessarily in the church, but one that, in terms of my biological family, one that was always supportive of me, but suddenly I wasn't the me necessarily that they had grown to know. And so that posed a heck of a lot of challenges. I guess I got to a point where my three other best friends who I lived with in university and so on were totally sideswiped and flabbergasted. And I don't think they knew how to handle it. So the easiest thing to do was to kind of say, sayonara, see you later.
Oh gosh.
My church family certainly didn't want to help me if I didn't want to be helped, so to speak. Things really went south relatively quickly with the difficulties in my marriage and relationship, which led to moving out and led to some unfortunate circumstances where information was then passed on to my employer, which then led to me essentially being constructively dismissed from my job.
What?
Yeah. So I ended up in a little basement apartment, and it's tough to think back to those times because, I've said this before, I could handle that in the sense that, I was, I had some money saved up, I wasn't going to starve, I wasn't going to be homeless. man, oh man, it was a difficult time.
That was a difficult mental time. I mean, sure, physically, financially, it sounds like you weren't gonna, like, as you said, starve, but shit, that's like taking every bit of solid foundation you had in your life and just blowing it up. Not and not that it should have been blown up at all. It was just one of those things. It sounds like you were like, well, this is within me. This is the truth that I feel. And when you shared your truth, the truth came back and slapped you in the face.
Yeah, it was, I said that when I actually realized that I needed to talk to somebody, I needed to have some professional, let's call it professional help, some in trying to understand what I was experiencing. I did need someone to tell me that it was okay to a degree. Yes. But it was, and you know what, in fairness to Frances being a relatively people pleasing kind of gal.
What, you?
Growing up, me, yeah, I know, eh? But look at me, I'm all-star athlete, and I'm like an A student, and I'm like the president of the Student Athletic Council, and I can get scholarships to universities, and I can achieve all these other things, and right, and those things, and I was doing those things for myself, but in many ways doing them for that acceptance as well, like, hey, I'm okay, right? And suddenly yes. I was not that Frances, so a part of me needed the it's okay, you're okay, but I also realized that I just needed it for I needed it for my own personal safety at that time, because there was a risk that I might harm myself as a result.
Well, we're glad that you're here.
Yeah, I don't think about that time in my life very much anymore. But I can now empathize with so many that go through those experiences because I was there, right? That's it's not, I'm not proud to admit that, and I didn't bring any harm on myself, but I certainly realized that there was that possibility, and and it was crappy, and it took time. It took more, they say time, time heals all things. And the reality was that it was a combination of time, and it was a combination of continuing to really work on myself, yes. that brought me kind of through the toughest point there. And it also gave me some empathy, more empathy for, the year was 2004, 2005, we're living in a hugely different place now, 13, 14, 15 years later, in which, maybe it's not so much of a big deal anymore to come out and say, hey, I'm gay. But certainly there's a lot of folks out there that are struggling, and kids, kids still, I think, have some of those struggles with parents and so on. But certainly the folks in the trans community, are the ones now that I believe need our, they need our empathy, and they need our understanding, and they need us to reach out. And that's important for us to be in this time and place too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you said something that really made me think of something that I've been talking a lot about lately, and I've talked a lot, I talked a lot about just throughout my life, is that I think there comes a point in time in probably everyone's life where the fear of life remaining as it is at this moment is actually scarier than just living your true authentic life. And so it sounds like you kind of experienced that. Like at some point you went, oh my God, what this life I'm living is not actually me. And you have to, in order to be to be your authentic self, you've got to move into who you are. And I think that's an incredibly scary time.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how little of me or less of me I had been I had been living, or who I was not who I thought I was. Later on, when people would say, yeah, like sometimes Frances, I would kind of come in and I wouldn't know, like, ooh, are we getting like nice Frances today or not so nice Frances today? Or, and in situations like that were brought to my attention, and I thought, geez, like, what the hell was wrong with me? Like, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like in truth, like I was truly just blindsided to who I was and how I was acting. And I think the other thing was then coming to this other side, so to speak, and coming out and that allowed me to become more of the Frances that I thought I was. But this was now like the new Frances versus the old Frances, right?
Right.
The old Frances was, moody and like maybe quick to anger and, all kinds of things that I just thought, geez, like who the heck wants to be around that person, right? And I couldn't just blame it all on the bodybuilding diet, okay? Because it was even when I wasn't bodybuilding. So now the cool part is that, wow, like holy smokes, there was such a drastic change that happened, when with this realization in my life, and now I couldn't imagine. I just could not imagine, and I couldn't imagine myself still living in that, and certainly for like the fellow whom I was married to and so on. I mean that just would have not been the fair and loving life for him.
Right.
So, I mean, but had I known all of this, of course, I didn't know how difficult it was going to be. Had I known how difficult, perhaps, so in my naivety, right, I just jumped in and I think sometimes we just have to just jump in with both feet and just trust, but trust, but also if you at least have that one person, or realize maybe I don't have anybody, which I really did not have anyone to turn to, because I was even leery at that point in time of sharing with, that woman who at the time, did not know how I felt, and I was leery at sharing as well. And I did get to a point in which I did share with her. Happy ending story. We're still together 14 years later.
That's amazing.
So, but there was a bit of the decision for her to also not necessarily want to interfere in something which was such a big change for me. That was a very interesting time to navigate on her end. At which point, I think she just got to a point to say, fuck it. Who am I, to say, what I don't feel or what I do feel, and try not to influence you, Frances, and so on and so forth. She very, very lovingly, and yet without any intent to skew perhaps how the outcome or so on. But she inadvertently had fallen for me. And that was a really neat thing. And, and here we are all these years later.
Well, and so you talked about how it sounds like bodybuilding at that point in time, if I'm understanding things right, was kind of like the one constant in your life at that point in time, because you didn't, as you mentioned, you didn't have anyone, right?
Yeah.
So how was that for you with that? And where do you think you would be if you didn't have that in your life at that point in time?
Yeah, it was a difficult decision to compete in that upcoming year. So the national championships were scheduled to be in the summer, and much of this stuff had gone on through the holiday season prior and into January, February. By the time March rolled around, in fact, I believe I was still in my job at that point. But by the early July of that year, left my job early with no prospects for job and so on and so forth. But bodybuilding, knowing that the national championships were going to happen, I thought, I've still got to do this because I really don't have anything else. And the beauty of bodybuilding is that it's habit. It's a bunch of actions that you just put together, day in, day out. You make each day look as similar as you possibly can. And you often have to separate yourself from family and friends and so on. Anyway, so I thought, well, all those things are gone. There's still much stress, but we're just going to try to mitigate it by just doing, the repetitiveness of the task, which is preparing for a bodybuilding competition. And I remember showing up at nationals, and I had a fantastic coach at the time, and of course I didn't know it at the time, but I knew that it was a difficult prep at best. Okay. But I wouldn't let myself believe that. And on the day of the competition, just before I'm about to go out onto the stage, my coach at the time, Mark Sylvestre from Quebec, looked at me and said, "This is the best you've ever looked."
Wow.
And that's all I needed to hear. Right. Because I just went out there and I did my thing. And one of those photos, was the ab and thigh shot that you saw. And, and note to everyone, it was not the best that I had ever looked. Right. But the point was that Mark knew exactly what I needed at that time, to go out there and to execute. And the chips would fall where they would fall. I didn't win that competition, but, I placed second. I was selected once again to go to the World Championships, and the rest is history. Following that, but it was the thing that I needed. That, as you called it, Kristen, the one constant, that was very, very life sustaining at that point, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's part of how Empowered by Iron came about, was Mary and I kind of sharing our stories about how that daily grind of training and focusing on your nutrition and your sport and your recovery and your mobility and all of that habit and that routine can actually pull you through some really terrible, dark things, because it's that one constant that's there, and it's a form of self-love. Mm-hmm. when you're not necessarily feeling any other reason to love yourself, but you're going, well, I've got to take care of myself because this is the only thing I know to do right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the power of, I think, women in strength sports, is just, even if it's not necessarily going, oh yeah, I'm badass, I'm strong because I can do this. It's just the grinding, that learning to grind through things that are so challenging and so difficult. And you go, okay, I've experienced something like this before, and I'm just going to grind through, and I'm going to get there. And sounds like that's what you did. And you had a huge smile on your face in that picture. I don't know if that was, just a forced smile, but you sure looked like you were enjoying yourself.
Yeah. I credit much of that to Mark and the words that he left with me, as I went out there, and also to the fact that I love the stage. So the bodybuilding stage, I love the powerlifting platform. I used to joke that was my new bodybuilding stage was the powerlifting platform. I don't have fear going into a competition. And certainly with bodybuilding, there's no fear. The work is done. The work is done. It's just time to go out there and enjoy. And posing for me was a joy. And so that I couldn't help it. Right. But going back to the one thing that you talked about in terms of having the iron, or having training, or whatever it is you call it, your time in the gym, whether you're strength training, powerlifting, bodybuilding, you're just lifting weights. I think the one thing that's really valuable for us is, especially if you're struggling maybe right now with I don't have a goal, right? I need to have a goal. And of course, for very goal-oriented people, that's a very important piece of our lives. But I don't know if we talked about it the last time, but just training for training's sake is sometimes that's good enough. And I think we have to allow ourselves the privilege to just train for training's sake. And then the other piece too is because competition is not for everyone, right? Like, right. That's not good or bad, right? If you don't want to compete, don't compete. Training is great. And yet, if the training for training's sake goal doesn't really float your boat, then training for health is a whole other thing that I think we forget about sometimes. So, training to be as strong as you possibly can, a week from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. And so that value, the role of strength training for health, becoming, stronger, a little bit stronger every day, or let's talk about just maintaining our strength level. I know you guys in one of your podcasts you were talking about maintenance, and you said I'm no longer talking about maintenance or using that word maintenance, but maintenance isn't necessarily a bad right. word, right? Right. So, but maintaining our ability, of course, building, but at some point, we're just at a threshold where when we train, we're mitigating the effects of age, long term, and we're all going to get old. We don't all have to, become old and decrepit. In fact, none of us have to do that. But one of the things that we can do is we can strength train so that we can be strong as we age. And I think when you hit that 40, 50, 60 year, in terms of age, you start thinking about that a little bit more than perhaps you do when you're 20, 25 or 30.
Right. I really definitely love that you said just training for health, because absolutely there's no reason not to do that. And that I'm a big advocate of just move your body and do things that are healthy. And if that means if competing is your goal or the thing that motivates you, great. But if you don't want to compete, no one says you have to, but get in and move your body and just try to be strong and resilient and, make your body bulletproof. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like I understand you a whole lot better. That the fact that you came from such a lonely place in a point in your life in which really, you think, someone who's not quite 30, when I think of 30, I think of house, cars, stable job, all this stuff, basically just stability at 30. For you to go to that, to nothing, mm-hmm. and then build what you've built, which is basically, obviously your own personal career, but then the Iron Sisters camps, just building these communities. I get it. You don't want people to feel alone, and you want them to know that there are people out there like them who support them no matter what. That
is a fantastic conclusion. Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought those two things together, because I've never done that for myself. I've never brought those two things together like that before. That's cool.
Well, it makes sense. And I think that's the evolution that we're seeing in strength sports and just in health in general. It used to be when you'd see a woman at the gym, even just 5 years ago when I started, if you saw a woman lifting weights, you would think immediately you would judge her, even if you were a woman, because she's going to get bulky, she's going to be manly, whatever. But now it seems no matter what level a woman is at, if you see her exerting herself or trying to better herself, and you're part of this community and you get it, you go up and you say, good for you. I'm very mm-hmm. proud of you. I see you putting in the effort. I see you. And if you ever need anything, come to me. And I think that that's amazing, that you're creating a space that no one can feel alone.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing that you just basically described a scenario that so many who train in gyms Now, remember we talked about pay attention at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention, because you're going to see a woman, and what you have to do. And I say this in our camps. It's I say building others up within our community is commendable, but reaching out and bringing others along and saying, like, come with me, I want to help you. That's our obligation.
Yeah. And
you just put into words, Mary, exactly what it is that we have to do when we're in those gyms. Now we can do it for guys as well. But it's more important, I think, right now, just for the time being, to focus on looking for those other women that are in the gym, and maybe they're in a corner and they got the 5-pound dumbbells, and you're like, yo, let's get you from those 5-pound dumbbells to the 10 and up to the where you got 25-pound dumbbells in your hands. Oh, guess what? Now you can get that 45-pound barbell on your back, or in your hands to deadlift, or whatever the case might be, and say, hey, let me help you, right? Just in the same way that I was approached all those years ago in the gym that said, have you ever thought of competing? It might not be that question that you get asked or that you ask that person, but it might be like, hey, have you ever thought about picking up that barbell? Yeah. And we've all got that obligation in which to do that, just to one other person, right? And just in that way, as we talked about earlier today, that's you build the community one person at a time.
Absolutely. And
that's what it's about.
I wish when I was 15, 16, and I was basically killing my body at the gym, just doing cardio for hours on end. I just wish that any of the women or men who are working at that gym, who saw me every day coming in for 2 hours, would have taken 5 minutes and said, hey, can I show you this? Can I show you what a barbell is? Can I show you that there's another route than what you're taking?
Yeah.
But no one ever did. And I've made it my point now, if I see a woman doing that, especially a woman, because I'm empathetic and I was there, killing herself on the cardio machine, or just, looking miserable basically at the gym, I go up to her and I say, have you tried this? Let me show you. That was the thing. It was like, I felt like the people at my gym who didn't help me, they wouldn't do it for free. It was almost like but I think as a community, we need to do it for free. We need to just walk up to them and say, hey, come lift with me, and just show them the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think perfect. I know it's not the New Year's resolution, but let's say it's, it's February the 3rd. By the time you guys hear this, we'll be well into February, but hey, let's spend the next 9, 10, 11 months making that our resolution for 2018. It's the Empowered by Iron. Hey, let me show you how to do this. Hashtag something.
I love it. We'll think of a clever hashtag. You have to have a clever hashtag.
Okay, I'll let you come up with a clever hashtag, and then I'll just promote it from there. How's that?
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Love it. Well, we thank you so much for coming back on, Frances. I felt like everyone who's listening right now understands Frances, and I love it. I love you. I love your mission. You're just an amazing human.
Thank you for that. I appreciate coming on to tell that part of my story. And yeah, let's keep it going. You guys are doing an incredible job. I think I've shared with you in private that I've been listening to your podcast, Perfect Dog Walking Lengths.
Thank you.
And yeah, so make sure if you're listening to this podcast that you go back and listen to others, because information never expires, right? Just because it's something that you guys posted a year ago doesn't mean it's not relevant for the here and now. So you guys keep up the great work and keep growing, and let's grow this movement even bigger than what it is now.
Hell yeah. What is coming up next for you in Iron Sisters, so our listeners can go check that out and maybe sign up for a few things?
Yeah, if you're still listening to this and it's February or March, while still listening to it as you've managed to get through the end, but you're listening to this, it's February or March of 2018. We have a few spots left for Iron Sisters USA's second camp of the year in Madison, Wisconsin at Functional Integrated Training. That's the second weekend in August. And I think registration's about to open for the camp at Brutal Iron in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So you can find registration for both those camps at ironsistersusa.com. And coming soon, information on the 5th edition of Strength Camp, which will be once again in the Hamilton, Ontario, Canada area. If you're wondering where that is and you don't have access to your Google Maps, it's close to Buffalo. So if you're anywhere in the world, you're welcome to join us. Fly into Toronto, Canada, or fly into Buffalo and get your ass into Hamilton for what's going to be an incredible 5th edition of Strength Camp.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for being on, Frances.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Until next time, see ya.